What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Eric Wilson. And today we're going to be talking about the New York Rangers, the win streak that they're on, and the effects of Peter Laviolette on this win streak. Now, this looks like a totally different New York Rangers team from what we saw last season, in my opinion. They're playing with a lot more intensity. Yeah, they've had a lot of problems with giving up too many penalties, but they've done a great job killing those penalties. And honestly, this team looks intense. They look physical, and they look motivated by Peter Laviolette. I've been super impressed with him. And there is some information now, new information about Peter Laviolette and the new practice regime, or regimen rather, that he's instilled on this New York Rangers team, which I think will get fans pretty excited once we discuss. So we're going to go ahead and discuss those topics in today's episode. But before we dive into all of that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Rangers. Without further ado, Eric, how are you doing today, my friend? And what are your impressions on Peter Laviolette through the first month of the season?
I'm doing pretty good. Tonight against Winnipeg, it's the final matchup of the first month of the season. Hopefully the Rangers can extend that win streak to 5 games straight. But, just looking at everything we've seen so far, I'm very impressed with Laviolette. The change is very noticeable going from Gallant to Laviolette. And hopefully we'll just see more of this impressive change in performances tonight against Winnipeg. I know we're going to have this episode up early today, and then later tonight, me and Colin will be going live to cover the game before the game starts. So be sure to tune into that as well. But I don't know, I'm pretty high on Laviolette right now.
As am I, and I do think those practices that he's been implementing, the new style of practice, have really been making a difference. Now, when discussing those practices, there were some reports out. Eric, I know that you wrote a little article about it, have some good information about this new practice style that Peter Laviolette is implementing. So what are the differences in this practice style that you've read about from Peter Laviolette, and how do you think that's affecting this team?
I mean, these new practices, they started during training camp and preseason, and just now they've continued into the regular season. They're very, very intense. They're faster paced. They're much harder, and they're a lot longer. There have been reports from Molly Walker saying when the players get off the ice after an hour-long practice, their faces are beet red and they look like they just finished playing in Game 7 of a playoff series, where that's just the level of intensity. And, there was some comments from Chris Kreider about how the practices, there's more of a competitive atmosphere going on there. So the players are really working a lot harder and are giving a lot more effort to this conditioning and training. And that's translating perfectly onto the ice. And you can just see from players like Panarin and all these other guys who used to be just star players with just pure scoring abilities, but not really much grit, physicality, or aggressiveness, or really just coming out onto the ice and looking like entirely new players. And it's really just benefiting this entire Rangers team.
Yeah, and one of the things that Molly Walker highlights in that article that you just referenced is competition. So Peter Laviolette, rather than just having them go through team drills, he's created competition within those team drills, and he's made goals for each player to beat each other, be the best in practice. And I think that's something that's bringing out the best in these players. One of my favorite quotes from her article says, sometimes a group of players will cheer so loudly after a goal in a skills drill that you would think it just unfolded in Game 7 of the playoffs. So again, you're hearing that intensity, elevated pace, intensity and emotion, and competition has been at the root of these new practices. And I think that's something really exciting. You're seeing these players take practice more seriously. And of course, that's translated into the games so far. Chris Kreider told the New York Post that he finds these new practices a lot of fun, but guys don't want to lose. We're tracking wins and losses. You can hear how energetic it is. Guys are hooting and hollering. It's all in the vein of competition. It's all competitive. You lose one of those competition drills, you want to win the next one that much more. Everyone's pushing each other. It's a lot of fun, but I think it's really good for our team. So that's one of the leaders of this team, Chris Kreider of the New York Rangers, discussing these new practices from Peter Laviolette. And like I said, I think you're really seeing that stuff translate to this team when they're on the regular season ice. And Eric, what are your thoughts on that? The comments from Chris Kreider and kind of this new competition-based approach from Peter Laviolette, and how do you feel that that's getting the most out of all these Rangers players?
It's exactly what the Rangers need, not only just the competition, but just Laviolette being very much more hands-on and demanding of his players, where under Gallant, practices, you never even heard anything about them because they were probably just extremely unimportant, didn't really matter. They probably didn't work on anything. But nowadays, under Laviolette, the Rangers want to work harder. They want to play harder and win. And that competition, like you said, is translating to the ice. And like statistically, there have been significant improvements. Faceoffs have gone up substantially. The power play is cooking right now. Penalty kill still isn't perfect, but it's still in the top half of the league. So there's no complaints there whatsoever. So just seeing how important these practices are, the conditioning, working harder, not only is it good for morale and that competitive style of practice and play, but it's helping make the players stronger, faster, and it's making the Rangers an overall better team.
Yeah, and I know at the beginning of this episode, Eric, you mentioned that this team looks a lot different than Gerard Gallant's team, right? It looks a lot different than Gallant's New York Rangers. A lot of that has to do with the different practice style compared between Laviolette and Gallant. But when you're looking at the team on the ice in the regular season, what are the key differences that you're noticing between last year's team and the way that the coaching kind of dictated what they did on the ice versus this year's team and the way that the coaching staff has set them up for success?
Yeah. So just to like go even deeper into what I just was talking about before, the face-offs, this season so far through 8 games played is at 54.3%. That's one of the best in the entire NHL right now compared to last season's where the Rangers finished with 49.1% of face-offs won. So last season, the Rangers were losing more face-offs than they were winning. It was one of the worst in the league, and that's one of those things that you need to practice. It's not like scoring goals where you're like, oh, we'll just keep trying and eventually something's going to go in. You need to work on that heavily in practice. And another thing that Laviolette has worked extremely heavily on in these practices is the special teams. Last season, the power play and the penalty kill were both kind of mediocre. I think the Rangers power play was in the top 10, maybe, but definitely not the penalty kill. But right now, the Rangers power play through 8 games is at 34.5%. That's the second best in the entire league, only behind New Jersey, which I think they're at like 40. But just overall, just like all of these statistical things that are going on, face-off, special teams, there's a significant improvement that is seen right here, just on paper in the stats. And then outside of stats, one of the biggest things, just to go back to players like Panarin, they're all playing differently. If you would have looked at Panarin last season, sure, would he have maybe an assist or two every single game? Yeah, but did he contribute anything else? No, not really. And then now you look at him this season, Panarin's one of the better looking forwards on the team where he's making defensive plays. He's taking the puck away rather than giving it away. And the same can be said for other guys like Kaapo Kakko, Alexi Lafreniere, Vincent Trocheck. Even outside of offensive scoring, all of these forwards are getting into the corner, playing along the boards, making the gritty plays that no one wants to make, but they're stronger, they're faster, and they're more confident in themselves. And that really all just stems from these new practices, the competition, the level of work ethic that's going into all of this.
Yeah, and another thing noted by Molly Walker in those in that article about these practices, they're also changing things up every single day. Like it's not a routine. They're not doing the same thing at practice on Monday that they're doing on Tuesday, on Wednesday, Thursday. There's like different drills and different things. They don't know what to expect every single day. And I think it was Mika Zibanejad in the article said that that's causing them, or no, sorry, it was Kaapo Kakko was saying that is causing them to focus more on each drill, because they're not just going through the motions and going through this repetitive nature of each drill that they do every practice. It's always something new, and it's causing them to really focus on that drill. And I think that's another great wrinkle added here in these practices from Peter Laviolette, who, like you said, and like I've been saying, I'm super impressed with Laviolette. This is exactly what the Rangers needed, was this coach to change the pace of this team and really create more of a structured environment for these Rangers players. I know we talked all offseason, Eric, about the way that Gerard Gallant would coach this team, and we talked about Panarin, for example. I mean, we're seeing Panarin looks like he could be going for a new career high in points this season. But last year, it felt like he was just kind of playing freely on the ice with very minimal direction, causing a lot of giveaways to occur. But this year, I feel like we've seen him play more defensively, do a lot more on the offensive end in terms of controlling the puck and not giving it away. It's been a really impressive year for him. So, Eric, I know that you probably want to talk about the bread man. Happy birthday to the bread man. Today's actually Artemi Panarin's birthday, so shout out to him. But I want to know, like, what exactly it is that you think Peter Laviolette's new system is doing for Artemi Panarin. What some of the key changes that you're seeing in his game that are helping propel him to this career year are?
It's two things. It's more structure and it's holding players accountable. Whereas Gallant would kind of just be like, all right, star players, just go out there, do your thing. I'm sure goals will come, and if they don't, like it's okay. We'll just try again next game. That was like the biggest thing that caused the Rangers' downfall in the playoffs last year. Panarin had a good game one, but then after that wasn't visible. He didn't receive any punishments for his bad play, and the Rangers lost in 7 games and had a really early playoff exit. But now we have Laviolette, who's working his players harder in practice. If you have a bad game, that's not going to slide. You're going to be held accountable. You might have to work a little extra in practice. You could even, there hasn't been much line changes so far throughout the season, but that's because everyone's been playing so well. But I wouldn't be surprised if, Panarin goes on like a 5-game stretch without putting up a single point. If he gets put down on the third line for a couple games, which is a little bit of a wake-up call. And it's just the more structure to the game too, where, how I kind of mentioned how Gallant would just send them out there and be like, do your thing. Whereas Laviolette, he has set plays. He has a style of hockey that is working with the Rangers that everyone needs to follow. And it creates like one cohesive unit as a team where there isn't 12 different forwards out on the ice doing their own thing. There's one set game plan, and that game plan is earning the Rangers wins. And it's players like Panarin who have the skills to succeed that he just needs the plan to put it in motion. And that's what's really working out for him so far.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think I have a similar analysis of what I'm seeing from Artemi Panarin as I shared just a second ago. And listen, I think that this is going to be the year that he cracks 100. Like, he looks so sharp. He's on a crazy point streak. Every single game, Panarin is making plays and putting this team in position to win these games, and they've been winning because of it. So it's been really exciting, because Eric, when you're looking back on this offseason, we would talk about this team and say, we might see a little bit of a regression. It's just going to be different, right? We don't have that superstar, star-studded lineup on paper that we had after the trade deadline last year. Tarasenko's gone, Patrick Kane is gone. But then we brought in this new head coach and pretty much kept that main core intact without all of those flashy additions. And the Rangers are looking better than ever in many respects. So it's been a really interesting start to the season. The Rangers look like a very strong team, picking up these road wins like they don't care that they're on the road. And I think that's something to be really excited about. But who are some of these other players, that have entered this lineup and really impressed you or kind of exceeded your expectations? I know that we set high expectations for guys like Panarin. He's exceeding them anyway. We set high expectations for a lot of players, but who's really exceeding those expectations and do you think is benefiting most from this Peter Laviolette hiring other than Artemi Panarin?
I'm going to throw 2 what might seem a little random names out there, but I'm going to say Will Cooley and Nick Bonino. Now, Bonino hasn't gotten a single point yet this season. Will Cooley only has like 1 point, I think, which was his first NHL goal. But you look at this lineup, you look at last year's. We had the stars, we had Kane, we had Tarasenko. That wasn't what the Rangers needed. That was too much talent and not enough role players. Bonino, Cooley, they're these types of players who aren't going to put up many points, but they're going to do the hard work that Laviolette is really trying to implement. Sure, does Bonino have 0 points in 8 games played? Yeah, but he's never going to get scratched because he wins faceoffs. He's great on the penalty kill, and he makes a lot of really good defensive plays. Cooley is a big young player who is very physical. He's going to be the one laying the hits. Next time there's a fight with the Rangers, I bet you Cooley is probably going to be involved. And that's what the Rangers need in their lineup right now. That's what's going to benefit them the most from Laviolette's system of hard work and effort and moving into the playoffs, assuming the Rangers make it. Guys like Patrick Kane aren't going to make that happen on the third line. You need a guy like Will Cooley, a guy like Nick Bonino, who's going to do the not flashy plays, but the plays necessary to find success.
Yeah, and I think Will Cooley is a guy that last year probably doesn't find success with the New York Rangers, doesn't fit in, absolutely, because you look at how star-studded that lineup was by the end of the year after the trade deadline. Will Cooley is a guy that probably doesn't get this opportunity and doesn't have the chance to impress this coaching staff, but he got the opportunity. And one thing that I will say, I appreciate that this Rangers staff did reward him for such a great training camp and preseason. Cooley stood out all offseason long and made a name for himself, fought his way onto the roster, and the Rangers did reward him with that roster spot, and he's risen to the occasion so far. And I think that's something where you got to give credit to Peter Laviolette. And that kind of reminds me of another thing you got to give credit to Peter Laviolette for, getting these kids in the top 6, right? Eric, I know that you've been talking for a very long time about how Lafreniere, Kakko, Hedl have just been trapped down in the bottom 6, and you feel that that's stunted their growth and development for years and years. But now with them all in the top 6, or at least getting a lot of top 6 minutes, they're all playing great. Lafreniere especially, he's been the surprise of the year. I know you did a video on him recently, Eric, discussing the way that he's kind of already embarked on that breakout campaign through the first month of the season. But that's something that I wanted to highlight there, just because Laviolette has shown not only that he's been more disciplined with this team. Not only is he implementing new strategies in practice to help this team be better, but he's actually probably gaining a lot of respect, I would assume, from this team because of he's rewarding these players with opportunities, these young guys taking chances on them. And I think that's making them play up to a higher level, playing for Laviolette rather than just playing under Laviolette. I feel like these guys are actually playing for Laviolette, whereas I felt like they were playing under Gerard Gallant last season. Right now, they're playing for Peter Laviolette, and it's creating a lot more motivation within this team and leading to a lot of early season success. So, I assume that you feel the same way that I do, and you're probably seeing a lot of great things from the kids. And know that's a storyline that you've been closely following all year long.
Yeah, I mean the kids have all been impressive. Lafreniere scoring goals at a pretty consistent rate. Heedle hasn't scored a goal yet, but he has a bunch of assists. And yeah, you can say that it's because they're playing with like Panarin while he's in like his peak form right now. He's in like God mode Panarin this season, and I'm sure that helping them? Absolutely. But at the same time, it's also getting that top six role, getting power play time as well. All of the kids are on the power play now. And that's exactly where they should be. That's where they should have always been. And I'm so happy that Laviolette is finally the guy to bring them up. Have a guy like Cooley, who I said is more of that physical role player down on the third line. That's the reason why Othman isn't in the lineup right now, which, by the way, Othman did have a 3-point night last night. He's cooking down there in the AHL. But guys like Othman, Lafreniere, Heedle, Kakko, they need to be in the top six. They won't thrive in a bottom six role when your mission isn't to score and it's to be physical and play defense. Leave that for the guys like Blake Wheeler or Will Cooley. So I don't know, just seeing the kids in the top six is making me very happy. Kakko doesn't really have a lot of points just yet, but he's looked really good. And I think it's way too early to start being critical of him, but the other two kids looked great.
100%. And listen, this team has just looked really solid to start the year. It's still early. The Rangers leading the Metro currently, but it is still early. They're on this road trip, and they were pulling out these wins. But that last win, let's be honest, Eric, maybe they shouldn't have had that. Maybe they didn't fully deserve that win. The ending of that game, you could argue there was a missed tripping call in favor of the New York Rangers. They go down, they win. Go ahead. Yeah, let me hear it.
So immediately when I saw that goal, I was like, okay, yeah, the refs handed us that win. But upon further review, I could deduce that the Rangers did not make contact with that Canucks player. He just tripped on his own. So
there you have it. Well, that's the analysis that we like to hear from you, Eric. But I just will say I thought it was an ugly win for the Rangers regardless, in terms of giving up, I think, what was it, 6 penalties in that game they committed. It wasn't pretty, but it was a win nonetheless. And I think that's something to give credit to the Rangers for. They're finding ways to win these tough, ugly games. And I think you got to give credit to Peter Laviolette for that as well. And I think probably a lot of that plays into what we were talking about at the beginning of this episode with those practices, those grindy, intense, competitive practices. I think that they are helping the Rangers find the edge towards the end of some of these really close games. So it's exciting times being a New York Rangers fan right now. We're seeing some good stuff from this team. And of course, as this season continues to progress, we'll continue to update you on everything surrounding the Rangers right here on Fireside Rangers. Make sure to tune in to Eric's live stream tonight, pregame live stream. I know a lot of you have been tuning in, and I haven't been able to make it to any of these live streams yet, but one day I will, and we will all have fun in the chat. But I really do appreciate you guys supporting my guy Eric and supporting the channel and all those live streams. We really do love and appreciate all the support from the viewers so far throughout this great season. So that pretty much wraps this one up. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Rangers. But without further ado, we will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one. And let's go Rangers.